Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra, the Watchful.
I am Sir David, the Huntsman.
Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we are diving into Chapter 4, Eddard. This is full of some good, juicy details, right? A lot of references to the histories and things to come. So I'm excited to dive into this one. Once again, just want to thank everybody at Podbean for promoting us and everyone who is supporting us on Patreon right now. So thanks so much. Our first show segment is just Small Council, and we haven't done this. Really, normally we talk about the show stuff, but how are you guys doing first? Is everybody doing all right?
Man. Yeah, doing good.
Doing all right?
Didn't I just see you 10 hours ago?
You did. You did.
Last night we dove into the, we went and got the Game of Thrones, let me look at this, Hand of the King card game. We had some people hanging out. We were hanging out with our good buddy, Sir Thomas the Round.
That's right.
And I don't know, I've been seeing this card game on Amazon. I picked it up, and man, we had a lot of fun playing it last night. I thought it was going to be like, we played like one round, and it was like...
Yeah, once we figured out
how it worked, it got real competitive real fast.
Because you have to like move just real quickly, like because it's a fun game. You have to move Varys around and sort of take these banners and stuff. And it's all about like, if I knew Matt was coming next, where do I put Varys so that he only has House Stark and Tully to pick between? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Stuff like that.
So yeah, it was a lot. It was definitely a lot of fun. We'll be playing more of that.
Yeah, we'll probably have to. And we're also. Can we tell them?
Yeah, we're thinking about.
If we get to that first goal on Patreon, we're working towards this.
Yeah. So yeah, our first Patreon goal is we said we would make a drinking game, and so we're thinking about making a drinking game that involves this Hand of the King game. And perhaps maybe doing something crazy that involves there's 7 different houses, 7 different types of alcohol.
It'll be called the Game of Death.
Yeah, is what. Yeah.
And what do we say to death?
Not to death.
That's right. But that'll be a lot of fun. So we were going through. We were looking for literally.
We're actually almost at our first patron goal, aren't we?
We're getting there. Yeah, we're getting close.
Yeah, we're pretty close. Yeah.
And so we were looking at the different types of alcohol, and it's like, what has a stag?
Exactly.
What has a lion?
There's like the Kraken rum.
The Kraken. Yeah.
The Kraken rum, and then we saw like a fire. It was like firewater whiskey and had a dragon on it. Like, obviously. Yeah. We were thinking maybe Smirnoff Ice. Even though it's like a wine cooler, but still Smirnoff Ice for the Starks.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So, anyways, that'll be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. So stay tuned. So yeah, let's dive into some of the HBO show news here. Winds of Winter. We always talk about Gur and his blog, not a blog. We call it Gur Watch. But what do you got for us today, Matt?
Not a lot this week. Unfortunately, Gur went into, as he calls it, hiding, and he's going to let his minions post on Not a Blog. So there's not a lot of Not a Blog news this week. Really, all we have is the cover art has been revealed for Fire and Blood. For some reason, they're giving us what it looks like in Germany, and it just looks cool. It's like gray, and it has like a Targaryen seal. Yeah, it's kind of like, it looks like an old book. It looks cool. So.
Yeah, it actually does look really cool.
That's kind of cool. I mean, I'm super excited for Fire and Blood.
So that's coming out this year.
That's coming out. That is coming out this year.
Who confirmed that?
Well, I believe Gur did.
Okay. Say no more. Say no more.
Yeah. So the fact that they
I'll look for it in a couple years.
Yeah. The fact that they have cover art, and it's supposed to be coming out this year, and then part 2 is supposed to be coming out next year. Supposed to be. And Winds of Winter was supposed to come out like 3 years ago.
3 years ago. That's fine. Yeah. Hey, you know what? I'm okay with it, though. I really do hope he takes his time and gets it done right. You know, he's a master.
Yeah. Master there writer. Was also a little nugget. It was like, you know, those I can't even remember who it is. It's like express.co.uk. It's some news site. They basically said that and like, you know, they tease out stuff, and sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not.
Right.
That HBO said that the last episode of Game of Thrones will have a lot of major character deaths, to no one's surprise.
Yeah, that's not amazing.
Wait, did you post an article on our Facebook page where they did the standing ovation? Was that true? Was that real or not?
Yeah.
So like the cast, they read the script for it, right?
Yep.
And all those deaths, but they also gave it like the crew and everybody gave it like a standing ovation. They were happy about the way it ended.
Oh, absolutely.
They were proud of it.
Yeah, and last week during our this segment, there was an interview with George Mormont, and he said that he loved it. Yeah, right here. Independent, excuse me. The finale received a 15-minute standing ovation by cast and crew at the script table read.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a good sign, right?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So, that's cool. All right, awesome. So if you guys have any more news or show news or hear of anything you want to send it our way, we'll talk about during Small Council, Winds of Winter things. We haven't really looked at the... I've read the Winds of Winter chapters, and I thought about that's something maybe we could talk about is just sort of the chapters that have been released, and kind of. I know most of you probably have read those, but they're just fun little nuggets to talk about in the beginning, get into a little speculation, and remind us where we left off.
And Ezra and I have been watching Talking Thrones, who has been reading. He's been going through a point by point. There was a big plot leak. Whether it's accurate or not, a lot of these plot leaks are false. But there were some last year for season 7 that turned out to be like almost like exact plot leaks. So I actually listened to Ezra's listened to most of them. I listened to the final one today, and I after listening to the finale again, I don't. You and I had talked about it. You can find that on his channel, Talking Thrones on YouTube. Too many characters were left alive for me to think that it was real. Yeah,
guys, I say we write our own episodes.
I think we should.
I really think we should. So,
but let us know what you think. How do you think season 8 is going to end?
Yeah,
send us a raven.
Send us a raven. We do have a raven today, by the way, and I'll go ahead and plug that. I'm not going to read the raven yet, but this was awesome from Billy Lapari. So if you're listening, wait till the end, and we will be going over some of his theories and the raven that he sent us, as well as Johnny Bodine, I think is how you say it. Maybe another raven there. So we'll be mentioning those at the end of the show. We're going to head into the Maester's Study now, and a quick plug for another podcast that I listen to, and they do an excellent job with basically this section, and I listen to them a lot. It's History of Westeros. These guys do a really good job of just talking about the histories, and they've kind of already gone through, a World of Ice and Fire. They're not doing it like we are, though. They're kind of just pulling out big topics and putting all the pieces together, I guess, whereas we're just going through a World of Ice and Fire. So, anyways, just a huge shout out to those guys who are awesome, and we're supporting them on Patreon. So all right.
So this week, we're following along in the World of Ice and Fire book. The chapter. This is our chapter 4, and we're on chapter 4 in that book as well. And this chapter is The Long Night. Sometime after the pact between the first men and the children began the long night. When a season of winter came that lasted a generation, and with this winter came a darkness. What ended this darkness is up for dispute. Some claim lesser gods came together to end the night, such as the Crab King and the Old Man of the River. Others claim a warrior with a red sword named Azor Ahai. Others a woman with a monkey tail. In the north, a story of the last hero who sought out the children of the forest and banded together the Night's Watch to defeat the darkness in what a legend is known as the Battle of the Dawn.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. I was gonna read something here. I got just a quote from the one of the books here about the Long Night. It is. This is Samwell Tarly to Jon Snow. The oldest histories we have here, written after the Andals came to Westeros. The first men only left us runes on rocks, so everything we know about the Age of Heroes and the Dawn Age and the Long Night come from accounts set down by Septons thousands of years ago. There are archmaesters at the Citadel who question all of it. So that really fits in with what you just said, because it's the idea that really this is all. I mean, what was it? Some of the lesser gods, the god of the river.
Well, I think it's the one with the monkey tail.
The monkey tail. I'm rooting for that one.
What happened?
Yeah. Well, that one's interesting. The monkey tail, because the funny thing is that where that legend comes from is, I believe it's like a Shai, which is like even further to the east. Which, when you think about it, if you, Gur has designed this world kind of out of our world. Yeah. And like, to me, that reference is a journey to the west, which is like a Chinese folklore about this little boy who has like a pole and a monkey tail that saves the world, which for most of you that has been adapted and is now known as like Dragon Ball, but it originally comes from like an ancient Chinese folklore, and so that's kind of like where that comes from. So I thought that's
cool.
That was interesting.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So there's a little history, a little study from our Maester study, and those will get more. Those will get longer and more in depth because these first chapters are short. They're vague, not much to them. But once we get into Aegon's conquest and the Doom of Valyria before that, actually, and then Aegon's conquest, a lot of stuff to actually go over.
Yeah, the next chapter is the Rise of Valyria, I believe.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, so let's dive into the reread here. This is Chapter 4, Eddard, and so we will have a recap here. Get this one, Matt?
The recap of Chapter 3. So last week we read Chapter 3, Daenerys. Daenerys is prepared by her brother Viserys for her arranged marriage with Khal Drogo. Daenerys gets nervous, but she doesn't want to wake the dragon.
Yeah, who does, honestly?
Well, we'll find out later who does.
Who does?
Oh, gosh. If she only knew, she could... Viserys is such a little... You know what? All right, so we're on to now then Chapter 4, Eddard, and so the summary here, just a short little bit, we won't spoil too much. Robert of the House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, has made his way to Winterfell. Eddard and Robert were good friends. They were essentially brothers, and I think that's important to note, is that they kind of, in everything but blood, they were brothers.
Well, they grew up together.
Yeah, exactly. They grew up together, and there was this. We'll get into more about his actual brothers, versus his relationship with Ned. Robert pays his respects to Lyanna Stark's tomb right out the gate. Robert and Eddard briefly discuss the rebellion and the Battle of the Trident. Robert has come to ask Eddard to be his new Hand of the King, because if you recall, 2 chapters ago we talked about Jon Arryn and Jon Arryn's passing. He was Hand of the King, and he has passed, and he passed rather suddenly. So yeah. All right. So there's your summary. Let's dive into some of the details. First third, we always divide this up into thirds. We're going to talk about Robert Baratheon. All right. We're also going to talk about Lyanna Stark in our second third, and then we will talk about Hand of the King, and really it's the responsibilities there and what all that kind of means for Ned. So, all right, let's just start with Robert Baratheon. I'm just going to read something I pulled this part. The first part here I pulled directly from the wiki, which is just Robert Baratheon, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, head of House Baratheon and King's Landing. He was crowned king after Aerys Targaryen, his first cousin, once removed, which is interesting, was killed during Robert's rebellion. Following the war, Robert married Cersei Lannister to ensure political stability. They've got 3 children, Joffrey, is that right? Myrcella?
Yeah. Myrcella.
Yeah, and Tommen.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I've never seen her name actually spelled out.
Yeah, that's true.
So, so from the book, I just love the description, how this kind of starts off. You see this, you see what Eddard has in his mind, and then his what he sees, what he remembers of his friend.
What did
right?
they say? It was 8 years?
Yeah, it had been 9 years since the rebellion.
Since
so
the Balon Greyjoy's rebellion.
That's
and
right.
I think it had been 15 years since the
Robert's
rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it had been a while since. I mean, you imagine even during the Greyjoy rebellion, he might have still fit this description that I'm going to read to you guys, which is 6.5 feet tall, clean shaven, clear eyed, and muscled like a maiden's fantasy.
Fabio. Gotcha.
So the smell of blood and leather clung to him during his youth, but he's changed.
Right.
He has definitely changed
significantly,
and I think it's just sort of like it's funny because Ned is like, when the column is coming north, he recognized all these different people, but he doesn't recognize the man in front.
Right.
He was being escorted by the Kingsguard. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's. When he shows up, I have in my notes here something that I found interesting is that the difference in the book and the show.
Mm-hmm.
In the show, he gets off the horse and like Ned Stark and everyone's standing there, and he walks over to him and he's like, "You've gotten old," and Ned Stark's like, "You've gotten fat," and everyone like looks, and then they hug and embrace.
Yeah.
And in the book, it's just he just gets off and he's just like, Ned, happy to see you. And then
Right.
he's like, you're gonna your grace.
Yeah. I actually like the way the show did it better.
I think it. I did better. I did
Yeah,
too.
it was good.
Yeah, but still, it just shows this respect. What's neat is Catelyn always talks about how these Northerners or these the Starks are just a different breed of people, and you really get this theme throughout this whole thing that they're frozen.
Yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
Their expressions and their manner are very just sort of cold and not cheerful, but just that they're very stiff and their humor is different and things like that. So, and anyways, also he hasn't seen his friend in 9 years, so he's happy to see him. And one of the coolest parts was when he right away says, "Take me down to the crypt."
Yeah.
And that is what gets a lot of respect. He's just like that, and Ned says, "I love him for that."
Right.
For immediately going down there.
Yeah.
Before that, he braces Cat, and like a long lost sister, which was nice to sort of see that. These are these big ruling, the most powerful people in the Seven Kingdoms. But they have these this history, and they're close. So. Yeah,
we also learned a little bit about his company riding with him, because they mentioned it at the end of the chapter. I have some highlights here. The crowned stag of Baratheon, which is specifically the crowned stag, because it didn't always used to be.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't always used to be that way. Sir Jaime Lannister with hair as bright as beaten gold, and there was Sandor Clegane with his terribly burned face. The imp Tyrion Lannister as well is riding along with him.
Yep. What's interesting too about that is that they're always, from the get-go, he is mentioning we're talking about bloodlines, or we're talking about
Hair color.
all of
color,
this. Exactly,
physical,
these traits,
appearances.
dominant recessive traits. Pay attention in biology class. Okay. So the seed is strong. We'll get to that later. But yeah. So he points out who's coming. Cersei Lannister is there, and we can talk about her in just a little bit here. But she is right out the gate. I mean, she's upset that Robert wants to go right down to the crypts. She's like, we've been riding for a long time.
Right.
Come on, let's rest. Let's get the horses. Let's do whatever. And he just looks at her. Now I said in my notes here, was there a more tactful way to go about doing what he wanted to do? Yes. Did he have to do all of that right in front of everyone? No, because that is his former betrothed, right? Lyanna Stark, going down to visit her, and his wife is standing next to him. It's
But he's the king.
He is the king, and that's why I love him for it. And that's and Ned doesn't care.
Yeah, she says like the dead would wait. And in the book, it's like one tiny little paragraph. In the show, you can tell it's a bigger deal.
Yes,
like it's a bigger deal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she makes a big scene. I mean, because he's kind of, everyone heard him say that, and you're getting to see him go. I don't know. It's just, and also, I mean, it's twofold, because it makes a lot of sense. You're traveling north. This whole rebellion started because of this. So to ignore it is not, not a polite thing either. So, but yeah, I kind of feel for Cersei, and I feel for Robert.
Right.
It's
and as right after that, I have my quote of the week.
Yeah, what do you got?
This is Robert speaking. They went down to the crypt together, Ned and the king, as he scarcely recognized. The winding stone steps were narrow. Ned went first with the lantern. I was starting to think we would never reach Winterfell, Robert complained as they descended. In the south, the way they talk about my 7 kingdoms, a man forgets that your parts is as big as the other 6 combined.
Yeah, I also was thinking.
So that's the first time we hear just about how massive and expansive that the North is. Because the previous chapters we've heard about some of the differences with Catelyn. We hear the differences between the gods, and some smaller differences. But this is the first one we hear specifically about that.
Yeah, and it's they elaborate a little bit more on it too, because he's talking about where are your people? What's going on? Where's everybody at? He's like, oh, they're probably just too shy, your grace, and he's like, or hiding under all this snow.
Yeah.
So, and I think people it's summer right now, but yet there's snow in the north. So you get these they call them late summer snows, I think, or something like that. So the South kind of forgets that sometimes. It's summer, but yet it's snowing, up north. So that's neat. So we get into we're getting to to the point where we're gonna step down into and start talking about Lyanna Stark. But before we get there, Robert Baratheon, when they're down in the crypt, you can tell he's a man of pleasure. Right?
Oh yeah,
right. I mean, that's all he talks about for a good 2 to 3 paragraphs. Is basically all this stuff where he's talking about how the women they run around, Ned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they might as well
naked.
be naked. Yeah,
And
he talks about just drinking wine and being fat. And
all the fruits and
they're just there's a fire fruit though in there somewhere, which was interesting. He made this reference to fire again, and I also thought it was kind of cool that. Robert is when he's talking about the women, and it's so hot down there, that it doesn't matter whether they're wearing silks or cotton. So again, to him, doesn't matter whether they're royalty or it's a common girl. He doesn't really care.
Oh, he doesn't.
And that actually says a lot about who he is. He has all these bastards. When he was in the Eyrie, or in the Vale, he hooked up with, I think, a lesser, maybe I can't remember exactly who it was that he has a bastard there though,
right.
And that was something that Lyanna actually was kind of like, I don't know if I could ever keep him to just one bed.
Right, that's something that comes up a lot. This idea that even I think Ned says it later that.
But I disagree with her actually.
Yeah,
and I think she says that, and that's sort of, I don't know that I would like to know when he was betrothed to her. If he did that before, if he actually even knew who she was yet, or had really been struck by her beauty and things like that. So
that's a lot of what ifs.
It is, it is. But I think the way when he did meet her and he was fighting in the tourney and these different things, I think he really did grow to love her. And some people have said it's just it's the idea that he didn't get her. It was just something that he didn't get. Yeah. But I do think. There was something there though that this is someone he would have loved through and through and probably been more faithful to than what he was with Cersei. Yeah. He wouldn't have done things like he's done to Cersei. So in my opinion, but So anyways, so he talks more about the pleasures of those things and talking about how cold it is down in those in the crypts, and then they talk about the crypts a little bit, and they talk about the tombs and who it is that lay down there.
Yeah, I have a line here about just how it goes here. By ancient custom, an iron longsword had been laid across the lap of each who had been the Lord of Winterfell to keep the vengeful spirits in their crypts. The oldest had long ago rusted away to nothing, leaving only a few red stains where the metal had rusted on stone. Ned wondered if that meant those ghosts were free to roam the castle now. He'd hoped not. The first lords of Winterfell had been as men hard as the land they ruled. In the centuries before the dragon lords came over the sea, they had sworn allegiance to no man, styling themselves the kings in the north. Yeah. So there's that line, king in the north already.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, and we talked about how vast it is, and it's sort of like, we'll get in later to how during Aegon's conquest, it was more like, and Daenerys brings it up later, it was, basically to avoid all this death and destruction and things. I wonder how those dragons would have fared up in Winterfell and things like that. So I think the North is a force to be reckoned with. But anyways, I
just think it's interesting if you go back a couple chapters. This is the first chapter where we don't hear the name Mance Rayder. We've heard it in all of the other chapters, including the prologue. Mm-hmm. But this chapter we hear about. So we heard Robert's rebellion. Now the previous chapter Daenerys, where we heard a little bit more about what kind of caused it and what was going on there. Here we hear about the Greyjoy rebellion. So subtly, we're just more and more getting this idea of there's a lot of wars that go on in these kingdoms, and a lot of power play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we get, I guess, when you start in this book, you're going to get a couple of those different skirmishes and wars and things that are happening. But yeah, I bet you on a smaller scale too, we sort of got this in Dunk and Egg where you have one house warring against another house under because what was her name? Remember the drought? We had the drought and she was the Red Widow, just little tiny skirmishes like that kind of break out and those types of things. Really, those are getting settled by, if that were to happen in Winterfell, a Stark would deal with that. If that were to happen, in the Vale, someone like Jon Arryn would have dealt with that. So it's whoever the warden is, the warden of the North or the warden of the East or the West or what have you. So
Lady Weber,
yes, yeah, and she was I forget who it was, the Checky Lion. She was who she was. They ended up getting married.
Yeah,
which was cool. But that's just one little tiny thing. Imagine all of these houses. We've talked about Sir Adam Parker, and his house, and maybe they've got a little skirmish going on with the house just south of them, because they control this money and stuff. And we got that in the video game, didn't we? We got that in the
Telltale game, the Game of Thrones with the Iron. Who are they? House Forrester.
House Forrester, that's right, yeah. And their fight against, and keeping the production of the
Ironwood.
The Ironwood. So, I don't know. That's kind of the cool stuff. But we see it on a larger scale. But, Gur will even write in some of this stuff that's between house and house, smaller houses and stuff. So,
right.
I think it's kind of cool. All right. I think now we're ready to dive into Lyanna Stark, actually. So let's see here. So when you think about Ned had his older brother, Brandon Stark.
Yes.
And his younger sister, Lyanna Stark. So those are his siblings. And so she is 16 years old when she dies. Is that right? I was trying to figure this out because it says that, but I kind of wondered if that was true.
Yeah, there's only a line in here. Had only been 16, a child woman with surpassing loveliness. Ned had loved her with all his heart. Robert loved her even more. She was to have been his bride, but
right. Yeah, and so, but my question. So I'm thinking to myself, when she's at the tourney of, which tourney was that?
Harrenhal.
Was that Harrenhal? Yeah, you're right. When she was there, how old was she then that she, got the. I'm
gonna do some. I'll do some.
Math.
Do some math.
Do some math because it is interesting. Because I'm thinking, I want to know more about,
so she's
Rhaegar.
17 when she dies.
17
so that
when she
means you take subtract 9 months for John's.
No.
Don't spoil it.
No, that's fine. It's good. Because I'm about to talk about Rhaegar. Because it's like. There's this whole piece.
So she's probably 16 when she gets abducted.
Or
pregnant.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah, and he takes her to Dorne, and I'm guessing Elia Martell is a part of this. Can I be honest with you guys about something?
No.
Okay, then I won't. All right. So here's the thing. When you really think about this, you've got Rhaegar and you've got Elia Martell, right? Older, established relationship, couple, etc., influencing this 16-year-old girl. And maybe perhaps there was some spells, some magic, some stuff that was going on. They get her involved in this whole. Maybe they fill her head with some of this stuff, or I really want to know more about that.
It wasn't true love, as
I'm trying to say that maybe it wasn't.
Whoa.
Because they make all sorts of references. Viserys says that his brother fought for his true love, and Dany kind of believes that. But, when she's being betrothed, she's sort of thinking, I wish someone would come and, rescue me, something like that. That would be kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking, man, she's awful young for this to be going on, and maybe it was
by our standards today. But if you think about feudal life, that's
when you only live to be 40. People are getting married at
no, I don't necessarily mean the age. I get that. I think it's fine that they're in a relationship. It would be fine for her at this age. A lot of the girls at this, Sansa is as well.
Yeah.
Getting married and things like that. Well, Sansa's 11 now, but she's. But my point is, I guess that how much of this was she willing to, did she not love Robert Baratheon? Did she, she was promised to him, and you see what the breaking of promises when you get to the twins, right? And how that, that really hurt Robb, Stark, and him breaking his betrothal. So I don't know. I just would really like to know more about it because I don't know. I think he really influenced her, and there has to be this. He had to have presented to her this idea of the long night coming again.
Yeah.
Right? We read it earlier in the show, and if it is Azor Ahai and it's the, that
that's something that's not explained. Is why did she run off with him?
Yeah, what
we don't know that.
I mean, because here's the thing.
That's why some people, All Shift X did a video on this, and he said he may have actually abducted her.
He may have, because here's the thing. I mean, if they had the secret annulment and then a marriage, he's the crown prince.
Yeah.
Who's going to stop him? I mean,
well, maybe he didn't tell her about Azor Ahai. Maybe he was just like, I'm divorcing her. I want to marry you. I want to overthrow my dad, because that was why a big thing everyone thought he was
the Tourney Heart. Yeah.
So maybe he was saying we can unite our kingdoms, because remember, the Mad King just killed her brother and her dad, and he's like, no, you and I can get married and we can end this. And she's probably somebody who's think about Ned, very strong family ties.
You mean after he had abducted her, then they were killed?
Yeah.
Because they went down to King's Landing because she was abducted, and that's when they said, hey, we want, get Rhaegar out here. We want to talk to him. We want his head, and that's when they kill her brother and her father.
So maybe they got together.
But Rhaegar wasn't there,
right? But
so your point is valid.
So maybe he didn't abduct her. So maybe they got married after the Tourney at Harrenhal. And she's pregnant, so she's like in the Tower of Joy, and he's just like, okay, you're staying here, resting, because you're pregnant. And then all this stuff goes on. She may not even have known. Yeah. Because she's over in like some random part of Dorne or whatever.
Right. She may have been, like, this information might have been kept from her. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it's a really interesting, story, because to me.
And I don't think we'll get it in the show.
No.
I think we'll get it in the book when we eventually meet when you eventually meet Howland Reed, if that happens.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Because Rhaegar, and I know we're on a big tangent here, but I love it. Because it is all the histories of
it's really the underlying theme of this chapter.
It really is. But to me, it's like Rhaegar. I mean, Cersei hints later on that Rhaegar just wasn't satisfied with, Elia Martell. She wasn't producing what he wanted, and so she says, I could have given him that. We could have avoided this war, But it looks like from Rhaegar's point of view, he wanted these bloodlines to merge. He had also studied this stuff. So, A Song of Ice and Fire, guys. But so anyways, that's just some stuff for you guys to kind of chew on and think about. I don't know. Send us a raven. Let us know your thoughts if you have theories on that. I'd like to know more about it, because I don't think it's done. I think everyone's just like, oh yeah, Lyanna and Rhaegar are getting, they got together, they love each other, and they did this to, bring Azor Ahai again.
Right.
The prince that was promised, or the Dawn, or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know that, she really knew that, actually. So,
yeah. Well, interesting thought here. Yeah. So we just did. So I just posted it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. The video we did, which was Adam Parker, Lord Parker, had sent us a theory to respond to, and we looked at it. So this is just a very quick aside here. So that theory would have to completely be tossed out the window. The theory was that by Ned Stark naming Jon Snow, he woke the Night King. Mm-hmm. Well, if that is what happened, then why would Rhaegar have been trying to create Azor Ahai?
Yeah. Right, exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. The Night King is there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I like, though, in that theory, it's not just the naming of Jon Snow, but yet their blood uniting. And so
that Jon is literally ice and fire.
Yes, and so that union in itself, and that the consummating of that marriage, is exactly what awoke this next long night, or the great other, or whatever. So yeah, gosh, deep and sweaty. I like it. So anyways, talking about Lyanna here, just some things, I guess, from the book. She was more beautiful than that. So he starts to look at how they had carved these the statues, right? And interesting note here, really, they're only supposed to be the lords of Winterfell down there.
Yeah.
And Ned went against that, and he loved, and this is a tragedy. Right. And so he has, and there might be a few more of those down there. Maybe they just don't mention them, but I can't imagine that's the only other situation where the Lord of Winterfell said, I'm going to have my sister and my brother next to their father. You know what I mean? So anyways, there's that. They talk about the likeness, and Robert Baratheon's just like, she shouldn't be down here. Yeah. She shouldn't be down here.
Yeah, she, damn it, Ned, why did you have to bury her in a place like this? His voice was hoarse and remembered with grief. She deserved more than darkness. Ned says, she was a Stark of Winterfell. this is her place.
Yeah. And it is. And at this point, all we know is that she was, she was asking Ned to promise her something. We don't even know what that is. So, at this point, I remember when I was first reading, thinking, she promised, she wanted to be brought back to Winterfell.
Or something.
Something simple or whatever. And I was like, whatever, brushed it off. Not that big of a deal. Big deal. Okay. They go on a little bit more, and he kind of talks about her and just how much that he, loved her. And let's see here. Yeah, they start to talk about the Tower of Joy. All right, and this is where they start to talk about how, Ned had taken his companions down to the Tower of Joy. So we can talk a little bit about the, how the Robert's Rebellion happened and how he ended up getting there, because he right here mentions that he had Howland Reed with him, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So Robert's Rebellion breaks out. This is actually kind of awesome. I'll give you just a quick little summary of this. But so when they steal, when Rhaegar steals Lyanna Stark and takes her away, and Brandon is on his way to marry Catelyn Tully and changes course and goes south. He goes south. He and I forget who else went with him. They're demanding Rhaegar's head. They are charged with treason. Basically, punishment's coming, but they want their lord fathers, these were younger men, to answer for their son's crimes. And so then they call Brandon Stark down to King's Landing. I bet there was sort of that's his heir. It's almost like he would rather go himself and let me see if I can free him. And I'm on a risk death to go down and see if I can get Brandon back home, Right. And they get there, and he demands trial by combat. And combat is the flames.
Fire. Yeah.
And they have to watch each other die, and it's horrible. And so after that happens, they kill, the Mad King kills everyone, and then he wants Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark, and he literally tells Jon Arryn, send them or we're coming for them, etc. And Jon Arryn says, the hell with this. Calls his banners, okay, and rises up again. Literally, at that point, it's like he's one of, the seven kingdoms. Yeah. And he decides to declare war.
Yeah.
That's kind of a
and
big...
Jon Arryn, it's interesting that he didn't at all say, I'm taking the throne.
Right? No. This was more just about, and that's the thing. He was this father-like figure. He was close to these, boys growing up and stuff, and he didn't have any children of his own, and so it was just like, and he saw, I don't know, it's just a time of peace and good relationships, I think, between these houses, and so it's like, no, forget this. We're going to war.
Yeah.
And because Ned is going back at this point when he hears all this has happened. He has to go back to Winterfell, and he's got to call his banners. Yeah. And then Robert does the same. Yeah. It's just so awesome that so that takes place, and as they get into Robert's Rebellion, and we'll do a whole thing on that later, but you get to Rhaegar's gone. Rhaegar is gone. He is nowhere to be, found. And he's with Lyanna Stark, and he's taken her to the Tower of Joy. We don't really know where he's at. He also took Sir Arthur Dayne, and I forget the other Kingsguard.
You don't really need an army when you have Sir Arthur Dayne.
No, you really don't. You don't. Sir Oswell Went, I think, is who. And Sir Gerald Hightower went as well. So those are important names. He took them with him there, and then he emerges late into this rebellion and shows up to lead some of the forces, and at the Battle of Trident is struck down. But kind of reluctant to show up, almost like he's taking care of stuff. Or I'm thinking spells and magic and power and crazy stuff is happening, But so he meets him there. There's the sacking of King's Landing, and I think it's after that then that Ned heard a rumor as to where Rhaegar was last in Dorne at the Tower of Joy, and he takes with him 6 companions. Martin, who are these? Theo Wool, Ethan Glover, Mark Riswell, Howland Reed, William Dustin, and Martin Cassell, and takes them to the Tower of Joy. So I was going to do some more research later and kind of look into those characters, but they get there. The only 2 to survive are Howland Reed and Ned Stark, and we get in there and they start. They go up and they find Lyanna, and this is where we can jump back into the book a little bit, and it kind of talks about how she. he found her. You guys have the quote here where he found her in like blood, or she was fond of flowers, and she's clutching these flowers, right?
He said Lyanna was fond of flowers. They had found him still holding her body, silent with grief. The little Cronach man, Howland Reed, had taken her hand from his. Ned could recall none of it. I bring her flowers when I can, he said. Lyanna was fond of flowers.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, Ned says, I was with her when she died. She wanted to come home to rest beside Brandon and father. He could hear her still at times. Promise me, she had cried, in a room that smelled of blood and roses. Promise me, Ned. The fever had taken her strength, and her voice had been faint as a whisper, but he gave her his word. He had gone out.
The fear had gone out of his.
The fear had gone out of his sister's eyes. And so then Ned remembers how she smiled at him, and tightly, her fingers clutched around these roses, and then when they drop, it was interesting that they're black.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of the sad moment where he's kind of, when he's down there, he's remembering how all this happens. Later on, he'll get a fever dream too, where he starts to remember the battle of the Tower of Joy and what took place. And he doesn't really tell us much, but still kind of cool. So
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Then following that is when we get a little bit of Robert Baratheon talking about Lyanna, and he says, "I vowed to kill Rhaegar for her for what he did." And Ned says, "You did kill him." And he says, only once.
Yeah, only
and
once.
And he says, I dream about killing him every night. 1,000, deaths is less than he deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's interesting. He just the hatred that he had. That's why there is this burning passion. There's this love that he has for Lyanna that I'm just so stoked about. And then this bitterness that he never gets to have her, and it just sort of it changes. I mean, it affects his whole life.
And that ties back into the previous chapter where Viserys was talking about, what was it, the hired knives? I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
He kept talking about, Thom. It was always about the hired knives, and which wouldn't be that far off. This guy's so nutty about killing Rhaegar like 1,000 times in his dreams.
That's right.
So
that's right. He also was not upset at the way in which Elia Martell and her children were killed.
Yeah.
And that actually caused a little grief between Eddard and him for a while, but it's the love for his sister that really, and their time at the area and things that had really,
brought them together
and keeps them together. They are brothers, We get that later where, he's talking, I think this might be in the show, but he's just sort of like, I was never close with my brothers, you were my brother. I chose my brother.
Right.
And so that's neat. Let's see. Now they start talking about some of the once they
Jon Arryn.
Yeah, they start talking about Jon Arryn. Yeah, and I think we didn't really have that as a segment, but I think it's important to talk about. So you have some notes on that because there's one thing I do want to find. That's really good.
So I actually have one note in specific. So I bring this up every time it happens on Kindle. If something is highlighted a vast number of times, it'll show you exactly how many times it's been highlighted. So I have a line here that's been highlighted 4,203 times. And it is when they are talking about Jon Arryn being dead, and Robert is talking that he wanted what's his name? Arryn.
Robin.
Robin Arryn to be fostered by Tywin Lannister. And Ned would sooner entrust a child to a pit viper than to Lord Tywin, but he left his doubts unspoken. Some old wounds never truly heal and bleed again at the slightest word. Then the wife had lost her husband. He said carefully, perhaps the mother feared to lose the son. The boy is very young.
Right.
Yeah, so just talking about Tywin Lannister and how you can just tell they don't trust him. They don't Ned does not like Tywin Lannister.
Right. I mean, he goes on to say that Lysa should have been honored to sort of that Tywin would take him. I think they're all conspiring though. The Lannisters they want control over this child, and so and Lysa's smart enough to recognize that and to say. I mean, she kind of probably knew what was going on a little bit to some degree, and she also has been around Cersei enough that she's not. I know she's a little crazy and she's changed, but she's still smart enough to know that this is not where she needs to be.
Oh, yeah.
And there is no more protection really.
Yeah, I mean, just wait till Tyrion shows up at the Vale later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there's a part here where they start to talk about who should be the warden of the east, and I thought this was
and
who does he want to be the warden of the east?
I don't think
they don't decide.
Robert.
He says that he's like, it's something we're gonna have to deal with. But then it's just kind of left open.
Okay,
so he just didn't want to leave
want
it to a 6-year-old sickly
he just
child.
he says we'll have to figure.
I thought he
out.
appointed somebody, or he was like about to appoint somebody. I was trying to figure out if there was a name.
Well, that was
attached
the
to
thing that Ned kind of took aback a little bit, because it was like, well, it's by right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh no, we're not doing that right now, Ned. Come on.
Yeah.
What even he said, it's a time of peace, Robert. Like, it's a time of peace. Let the boy have the title, and then hopefully he can grow during this time of peace, and then he could grow into that title, and it's his, and we never have to take it away and then give it back to him, essentially. Which it just goes to show, Ned's right.
Right.
That is sound. But I think he's sort of thinking, I mean, at that point, it sort of turns into like the Queen Regent situation where Lysa is in charge. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the mother of, so I don't know. But it is a little bit weird. I mean, you do kind of understand why Robert, wanted someone there in charge, because Robin is sitting, in his house seat there, and making judgment calls.
Right.
He's sentencing men to die. I mean, in 86.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is a little wild. So there's that whole piece. All right. So then they start to talk about the wall a little bit, and it's funny, not funny, I guess. Robert just sort of says it's been there for thousands of years. It can wait. It can wait. So they'll talk about that eventually. There's things that they need to do. This is right where I'm sure they were about to mention a Mance Raider reference, but Robert's not concerned with it. That's the concerns of the North.
Yeah, exactly. That's concerns of the North.
Yeah. So
Starks and
right, and so he's not there. He's a selfish guy. So,
Oh, absolutely.
But he wants his friend there. And before we get into that, there's something I wanted to. It's kind of like a little side note here, but I thought it'd be interesting to think about. I thought about this this is no joke. I thought about this when I was reading, and I thought when I was younger, if my sister would have been, if we were in those kingdoms and my sister would have been taken, I believe that my brothers would have called their banners as well, and would have rode to war with me to get her back. And I mean, so it is a great, story. And I think about that. I'm just like, we all kind of put ourselves in these characters' shoes for a little bit, and it's just sort of like, you guys would have been my Robert Baratheons, and we would have gone to war. Gosh dang it, because I have a younger sister that these guys grew up with, and knew in high school and stuff. She's just a year or so behind us, and think about that for a second. I don't know. It's just kind of it's what makes this story really sort of like, cool, and you can see yourself in it. And when you imagine growing up when you're fighting, with I don't know, sticks. Was I the only one who did that? I don't know. You hitting a tree and pretending it's something else. That's what you're thinking, like, I mean, here's the thing. This is going to sound super corny, and I can't believe I'm even saying this, but like, we had a tree house, right?
Yeah.
And Sarah was the one, my sister, who was up in the tree house, and I had to rescue her. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I had to get her back. So, and, but I don't know. So I just thought it was kind of a cool little thing, because I like this idea of Lyanna Stark. And oftentimes, the wildness that she had reminds Ned of Arya's wildness, right? But she's got that a different beauty than Sansa has. She definitely had that true Stark, look to her, but still beautiful. So it's the combination of Arya and Sansa that he can see in his sister, and so because later on when Sansa's like pleading for him to spare her direwolf, please, it reminds him of the pleading of his sister.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But all right, now let's move on to some other stuff here. So as they're talking about all of that, then it comes to it. Now we're here. Why did Robert Baratheon come north? Why did he come north?
Yeah, to name Ned Hand of the King.
Yeah.
And basically, he throws it at Ned, and it says, Ned dropped to one knee. The offer did not surprise him. What other reason could Robert have had for coming so far? The Hand of the King was the second most powerful man in the Seven Kingdoms. He spoke with the king's voice, commanded the king's army, drafted the king's laws, and at times even sat upon the Iron Throne to dispense the king's justice when the king was absent or sick or otherwise indisposed. Which happens probably a lot with Robert Baratheon.
Right.
Robert was offering him a responsibility as large as the realm itself, It was the last thing in the world he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is Ned he's expecting it. He's originally initially a couple chapters ago he's happy that his old friend is coming, and in this time of grief they can meet and talk. But it's coming. You get these ill signs and warnings and things that in the direwolf and the stag, and so here we go. We want him to be the hand of the king. Ned dreads that. There's all these references to when a Stark goes south, bad things happen.
Yeah.
And it's a reoccurring theme. And what's interesting is when Jon goes south, he's not a Stark. Necessarily.
Spoilers.
Or is he? That's just the show.
Yeah. No. Here we go. This is a great kind of end of the chapter here. Mm-hmm. For a moment, Eddard Stark was filled with a terrible sense of foreboding. This was his place here in the north. He looked at the stone figures all around him, breathed deep in the chill silence of the crypt. He could feel the eyes of the dead. They were listening. He knew, and winter is coming.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, that's basically the end of that chapter. And Robert's kind enough to give him a couple of days or a night to sleep on it, but basically says, I'm not a patient man.
Yeah. And if you don't do it, I'm giving it to Jaime Lannister.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even think he says. Is it Tywin or he says? I think he says Jaime Lannister.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. But yeah, there you go. I mean, that's basically it for the chapter. Some cool stuff there. We got some background. We got some background on the rebellions. We'll talk more about the Greyjoy rebellion. It'll be coming up here and there. That's one of the more recent bigger rebellions. You've got Roberts and then the Greyjoy rebellion, but both are mentioned in here too.
Yeah,
so right. which is neat. So all right, let's jump into the next section, which is our cool connections.
One line we get here is Storm's End, which I thought would be a cool place to kind of take a look at. Storm's End is the seat of House Baratheon, the Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. The castle is located at Durin's Point on the northern coast of Shipwrecker Bay, south of the Bronze Gate and northeast of Griffin's Roost. The King's Road runs north from Storm's End through to the Stormlands to King's Landing, the capital of the Seven Kingdoms. So the Stormlands is actually like right next to King's Landing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's really a land. It's really a one part of the realm that we hear probably the least about.
You're right.
In the books and the show, because because the Baratheons, spoilers, die so quickly that there's just nothing going on there.
Yeah.
And so Storm's End has some pretty cool history. It's surrounded by a massive outer curtain wall 100 feet high and 40 feet thick on its thinnest side and nearly 80 feet thick on its seaward side. So it is this massive, very thick castle. It's right on the bay, and it's all about the history of it. It stood for centuries facing the terrible weather of Shipwrecker Bay, with little wear to show for it. Legend claims that it was built by Duran, the first Storm King during the Dawn Age, who declared a war against the gods after they killed his family and guest, ruining his wedding to their daughter, Eleni or something. It is said that during God's grief raised 6 castles, each larger and more formidable than the last, but all were destroyed by storms. The massive 7th castle, Storm's End, is called Duran's Defiance because it was able to endure the storms. Some believe it was because the children of the forest took a hand in its construction, using their magic to raise the wall. Others believe a young boy who grew up to be Bran the Builder advised him on the construction of it. Mm-hmm. So again, that's another thing where we don't really. There's always this kind of every kingdom and every house has some sort of hint of mysticism or magic ultimately behind it. We see it a lot with the Starks and the direwolves and Daenerys with the dragons. Mm-hmm. We don't really see it as much with the other houses, but even something like this, they have this, there's some magic in their blood as well.
Right. And you have to remember sometimes, too, that the current lords of these regions were not, in the Age of Heroes, those were like Casterly Rock is not. You have Lannisport, which is named for the Lannisters, but Casterly Rock is not necessarily there, and it's now their home, right? And they rule it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always. There were other.
Even the
kings, actually, they were kings.
Yeah, even like the Reach, it was something like the Tyrells have it, but they weren't always the
right.
Yeah,
we hear about that in the Dunk and Egg thing.
That's right.
And so you have like Storm's End, and isn't that where the Dondarrions are from?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
they are.
Their sigil is actually like a lightning bolt.
Yeah, and that's pretty neat because this keep or whatever is which we seen that in the we haven't really no, and so it's supposed to be this really well
because Stannis has Dragonstone,
right,
which is the
right. So Renly, I'm sure, went back there. I don't know, did he? He seemed like he amassed, out in the fields with I don't know. So anyways, that's cool though. That's neat to get a little history about Storm's End. We don't hear a whole lot about it. You're right, but we will talk about it as we go. Or do we actually? No, they are at Dragonstone.
Yeah, they're he has Dragonstone.
Because there's a lot there when they're walking around with the Maester there. But I was kind of wondering if we ever got to this keep. I don't think we do.
There's like 5 lines. I mean, even on the wiki, there's like 5 lines about it. During Game of Thrones, Renly Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, flees King's Landing with Loras Tyrell after the death of his brother, and then he's riding to Storm's End in the Reach, and then he hooks up with Marjorie and declares himself.
Right. That is never. We never really see him get back to
nothing ever.
Keep,
nothing ever really happens. Maybe Gendry.
Well, he did. I guess
maybe
he did.
Gendry will go there or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Spoilers.
I guess I keep mixing this up. I want to correct myself because Storm's End is the keep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they say he goes to Storm's End, he did. Okay. Yeah. All right. Awesome.
Yeah, the Storm Lands is there.
Yes.
That area.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was the last one that sort of that last castle that sort of ended, this long line of these castles being destroyed by the storm. All right, so I think that's any other cool connections.
No, that's it. That's it for this week. Even the Storm. I'm looking at a picture. The Stormlands is actually I think like the smallest of the of the kingdoms.
Yeah. The house Baratheon. We'll do some history on that later too, and talk about Aegon's conquest and how. His bastard friend and how that all shook out and how he became, how House Baratheon sort of came to be. It's really interesting. It's closely tied to the Targaryens. So we'll mention that later. All right, guys, we're into Send a Raven. We would love for you to send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com. We read these on the show.
Yeah, or on Facebook or an iTunes review.
Right, absolutely. If you send us something on Facebook and it's something about the chapter or a theory, people seem to really like the theory discussions, and we love them as well because it's just all about speculating and it's fun to kind of think about where this could go. And so we normally post those on Thursday. So we won't have one every Thursday, but we might get to a point where we do have something every Thursday for you guys. So
yeah, and we're also going to be, it depends on how long they go. Like we just, our buddy Lord Parker, was one of our patrons, sent us one, and as and I sat down immediately, did it, and I just posted a YouTube video about it. So
yeah, if it's going to be a little shorter and it's not podcast length, we'll just put it on YouTube.
Put it on YouTube,
Yeah, but a lot of times these discussions get pretty deep and sweaty, and so we like to talk about them on Thursdays and get it all out there. So this is from Billy Lapari. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. He says, "What's up, guys? I'm really enjoying the podcast. My job involves a lot of driving, so it's a perfect way for me to get my fix during this long winter."
I love it.
All right?
I love it so much.
So I particularly enjoyed the theories episode. Wanted to run this one by you guys to see what you think. So we have been told that the ending will be bittersweet. This is a little more on the bitter side, but I'm thinking that neither Jon or Daenerys is the prince that was promised, but rather their unborn son, and the show will end with a small group of loyal men/women, similar to the ones that we referred to in the last show that saved Dany and Viserys, looking out for him until he comes of age to destroy
the Night King.
Okay. Who I think will sit on the Iron Throne at the end of the show. Oh, wow. I see the group consisting of Davos, Brienne, Sam, and Gilly, or Jorah, or something like that. Obviously, this will mean that neither Jon nor Dany lives, so I hope it doesn't happen. Anyways, that's my prediction, and I would love to get your thoughts. Keep up the great work. Now, we are going to do a quick response.
Yeah,
but I thought this was great to do a theories video on.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of stuff that we want to do. So when you bring it to the table and this is the premise for which we will discuss, we can go in so many different directions. And this is great. It's so open-ended that, yeah, we can really, kind of pull this apart. But initial thoughts, Matt.
Wow. I like it. I like it a lot. It's really interesting. So Ezra and I the other day looked up some of Gur's other writings,
right?
Other books, and I think there was a book that actually had a similar ending to this, where it was this kind of open-ended ending. It was something. It was about like Mars or something. Like it was like a space. It was a space thing. It had like nothing to do with fantasy or whatever. But the ending, I was looking at a quick summary of it because I was like, how does he end books? Because a lot of people have said a typical Gur ending, and I was like, okay, so maybe they've read a lot of his other writings. And anyway, so just the one I happened to click on had this kind of open-ended ending. So maybe it could. Maybe it could happen. I don't think I personally think that's how it's gonna. I think that. Well, I think that the show and the books are going to be totally different, totally different. Mm-hmm. And so it's possible that the books could end this way, but I think there's no way the show ends like that. I think the show will have a definitive ending.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I think the show is going to have a definitive ending. Could be different,
but that the books could have a more open-ended
absolutely. Yep.
ending like this. Mm-hmm. Dang, I actually kind of thought the opposite.
Oh, really?
I was actually thinking that perhaps if they somehow were able to, Gur's getting older, okay? Yeah. And if he were to say, who does he pass it? Sort of like Tolkien does. Yeah. He passed these rights over to family members, and they have continued working on his works and expanding on this universe, and their legacy just continues. Yeah. And it's sort of like then there's a bidding war as to who can get the rights to the Lord of the Rings show. I was thinking, man, he might set something up to where if the book is open-ended and allow the show to be open-ended to the point where it's like, yeah, we're going to go backwards while he's still alive and we'll do all this other cool stuff, but years from now.
Or do you think?
I don't know.
Or do you think it's like Wheel of Time, where they just bring somebody in, like they did with Brandon Sanderson, to finish it?
They could. I mean, he needs to appoint that person or have a significant other, someone who can do that. Yeah. Family.
I mean, Brandon Sanderson seems. I mean,
no, he's great.
He's like very to the point.
Yeah, he's good. So, anyways, that's really cool, Billy. I really like it. I actually think that this is something very Gur-like. Yeah. To be honest with you, this is very.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's why I'm a little shocked because we were talking Thrones. We were talking about. We'll go ahead and I will spoil a little bit of this for Fogel. I don't think you've heard this yet.
Heard them all.
But there's a part where they go to make a sacrifice. If you have not, we are plugging this show just because they're doing such a good job with these plot leaks, and it's just fun to kind of like imagine this. But there's a point where Melisandre is saying that we need to make a sacrifice to R'hllor and these flames, and she said, and everyone's standing around, and she like points, and she's pointing at little Sam, the baby, right? And it's just he was supposed to be that last sacrifice to the great other, the 100th sacrifice from Craster's Keep, and that didn't happen. So that's why the Night King is coming to really to get this baby. We're going to sacrifice him to R'hllor, and there's going to be this, Azor, all this.
Well,
stuff.
The other thing is,
so it being the baby is
we
kind
talked a little bit about this in the theory video we just did. That Azor Ahai and the Prince Who Are Promised may not even be the same person.
True.
And I actually brought this up in the history lesson earlier in this episode. Is that there's multiple different tales of things. They may not be the same person. So Azor Ahai, because there's a lot of people who think this guy could be it, this guy could be it.
That's right.
The Hound,
That's right.
to me, makes someone has a lot of sense who, if it's not Jon Snow, would be Azor Ahai. Because how ironic would it be that someone who has struggled specifically with fire is now the warrior of light.
Absolutely.
It has to have a burning sword. Mm-hmm. So, that it doesn't all have to be the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. So,
Dave, what do you think about it?
What do you think, David?
I kind of agree with you quite a bit on the theory. I mean, personally, if that were the way that the show or the book ended, I'd be pretty satisfied with that, honestly.
Oh, it would too, yeah.
I think that'd be great. But I don't think that's the way that the show's going to end.
Yeah.
And personally, I always thought that Jon was going to wind up dying in this season, so that to me wouldn't be surprising. I don't really know about them killing off Daenerys, but I mean, again, nothing would surprise me at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I like the way that this is. It'd be cool to dive into it a little deeper. If it happened, that'd be awesome. But as far as the show goes, I don't necessarily think that's the way it's going to go. I think they'll try and be a little bit more definitive.
I think it's just too big. It's too big and too many people watch it.
How many episodes is it? 6?
6.
Yeah.
But I mean, this. Could you imagine though? I mean, that's why I like this so much.
It's a good ending. It's a really good ending.
It's almost this like you build us up like there's going to be this great battle. Someone's going to come forward, and it's not who we think it is.
But then
it is the birth.
You would just have this clamoring of fans that would come up and be like, "So you're doing more now, right?"
Yeah,
that's true. That's why I was bringing that point.
No, it's like we will come to your house.
Well, it's interesting because it's interesting because it's always been the idea of prequels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think everyone's been on this idea that there wouldn't really be a sequel to Game of Thrones.
And there may be. And that's where I'm saying, like,
there's a sequel to Star Wars.
Because here's the thing.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
If you just watch 4, 5, and 6, when you get to 6, you're like, okay, it's done. Like, it's a definitive end, but it's not.
Right. Exactly. And actually, but you still knew in the end of 6, not to get into Star Wars, but like you still knew there were remnants of the Empire.
Absolutely.
And things that need to be settled.
This is a little different because it's just like, well, if you kill the Night King and like his army's done, like.
But there's still a Game of Thrones to be played. Yeah. And that's where it's sort of like you could get back into, we wouldn't have a clue. We'd have no, text reference, and someone could literally just go with it.
Yeah.
I don't know that Gur would ever let that happen while he's alive.
No.
While he's alive. No. But, maybe later on. So anyways, I love this idea.
That's a good idea. We'll do
a whole thing on it.
We'll do a whole
about it.
video or podcast, both. Yeah. I mean, it depends on how long it goes. And we just diving deeper into it and come up with some other bullet points and ideas. And,
absolutely. So thanks, Billy. We really appreciate it. We got a quick iTunes review. Johnny Bodine says, I don't want to wait until the show begins for there to be a podcast like yours. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate iTunes reviews. They
help the show so much.
They are the single biggest way to help the show.
Yeah, so
give us a review on iTunes.
Right. If you have something negative to say, send it to Facebook or YouTube. We'll take those. Well, we do want to hear the negatives because we know there are some. But
absolutely. Yeah.
And we want to improve. So we actually really do want to get better, and we want to keep kind of having these discussions and have a way for you. I mean, our whole Patreon is set up to become a member of a book club and a community and to influence the show.
Yeah,
it's literally, it's not just like, it's, the more you influence the show, the better it is. We have more content to discuss.
I mean, literally, like our patron, Lord Parker, is like, he sensed the level of detail.
I know, it's insane. It's great.
Nuts.
I know.
Like, it's awesome.
But that's that. I don't know. If you're a fan of Gur's work, that's what his books are full of. This reread, I've read this series twice. And I know that's actually nothing compared to what most people have read this. They've read it a lot.
I've actually this is really my kind of first read. I've read the first book.
Yeah.
But I haven't read the other ones. I just watched the show and then dove into like wiki articles and YouTube videos and stuff like that.
And there's this is why, Matt and I years ago, when we first started covering Game of Thrones, which we did years ago.
Yeah.
We would be talking and we would have this discussion like you would say, Ez, can he finish this in one book? And I said, there is no way, man. Yeah. There's so much stuff in here. There's priests and priestesses and other faiths and these different things, these storylines and threads that are just going to lead to all these different. I mean, if anything, maybe they're not a part of the main storyline, but there's so many little threads that go off and will just dissipate into what I call the blank spaces or the white spaces of a map. And it's sort of the idea that they go out there, we don't really know where they go, it's fun. It's like the side quest in a video game. It's sort of like there's all these side quests and stuff that people could write about later and tell stories and expand the universe. But it's just like, I don't know. So anyways, that's a side note. But all right, guys. So thanks so much. That's Send a Raven again. Send those to BTK Cast or onto our Facebook as well. We also just started an Instagram, so you guys can check us out.
Yep.
What's the handle on that? BTK Cast.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
There's a link for it on our YouTube page.
Cool. Okay. All right, so Man the Wall, this is just our plug for social media, which we've been doing the whole time, so we apologize for that. So we're going to continue to do food reviews on Patreon. We're going to continue to do theory reviews and histories on Patreon, but Thursdays will also be our day to sort of dump that extra content that's not exclusive to Patreon. So you'll still be getting some of that as well. So we're about ready to do our first HBO to book comparison. We said it last week, and I think we are legitimately like there.
We're like two or three chapters away, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to get into that. So we'll have that posted for you guys soon, and I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So time to say our farewell here. So we want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing chapter 5, John. Okay. I'd like to thank Maluka for providing us with our beautiful outro music. Huge thank you to her. Subscribe to her YouTube channel she does these beautiful covers of stuff that are absolutely excellent. It's maluka.com, MALUKAH.com. And we got something special coming up with her soon. Need to email her next week.
Yep.
So cannot wait to hear back from her. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, or leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We'll see you in a week, and remember, winter is coming.
And ours is the fury. No, I'm just